Molly Starback from the Office of Postoperative Services, and today we have a very special guest returning host, Shraddha Desai, who is a former Duke Post Office a year and a half ago, and a former president of the Duke Post Office Association, now working in INC research, and our three panelists, and I will let Shraddha introduce them, and I know we're going to start because there's a lot of information to cover, but let's thank our speakers for coming.
Thanks, Molly, and thank you everyone for coming today. Rather than my giving a big introduction about these people, I'm going to let them introduce themselves, talk a little bit about themselves. As you can see, each of them are a PhD. Probably you guys can relate to that as well. And maybe they can introduce while saying how they made the transition from academia to clinical research, and why did they make that different, that sort of change, and how they feel after that change for now. Because as you can see, they're not very old, so they haven't moved out of academia a long time ago. Some of them very recently, like me, only a year and a half ago, and some with a little more years of experience. So, Zoma, do you want to start?
Sure. Just make sure you let me know if you can hear me or not, because I tend to go up and down. So my name is Zoma Foster, and I'm a feasibility and I'll tell you what that entails, and site identification lead at InventIvel. So I, at what you call the front end of the clinical trials, think of it as a planning phase before you add the patient to the mix. Like, before we go out there, what can we, what data can we find, and what can we use, do with the data? And so I was a postdoc before I transitioned to clinical research. And I was a postdoc for a year. We ran out of funding, but it worked out in the end. And at the University of Houston, so I moved here from Houston in 2010, and then I joined PRA Health Sciences in 2011 as a trainee. So they had a training program where they hired about 40 people, and the training program lasted for about 8 weeks, and the goal was just to introduce us to the clinical research industry and see where we fit in, and taking the needs of the company into account. And so I ended up with what you call the Global Feasibility Group as a project research associate. And I can honestly tell you that I did not know such a group existed until I joined PRA Health Sciences. And my entry-level role did not exist until I joined the group. So they had to make up something like, okay, we now have somebody new, entry-level, and they made a role for me there. And so I was at PRA Health Sciences for 2.5 years, and then I moved to InventIvel. And for the last 5 years, I've pretty much been doing, feasibility, or what you call clinical trial protocol feasibility assessment, And and I think I like what I do.
Hello everyone, my name is Malik Mitkuri. I'm currently a manager at INC Research in medical operations. I started at INC in 2014 December as a medical affairs scientist. Our department mainly works on medical monitoring. It's like part of centralized monitoring. Centralized monitoring means monitoring the clinical trial from a place apart from the site. So which means we get the clinical trial data, ongoing clinical trial data from data management, and we need to have the protocol in mind and then look at the data and identify any protocol deviations, identify any trends, or communicate that with the sponsor. Basically, it's a cleanup of data as well as ongoing monitoring. So before starting at INC, I was a postdoc at NIHS here in RTP. Almost for 3.5 years, and again before that I did another postdoc at UPMC, University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. So I took a good amount of time to transition into industry.
Okay, so mine will be much more brief. My story is much more brief than the previous ones. I've only been in this field for about 8 months. So this past February, I was sitting out right where y'all were. So I'm a clinical research scientist at a relatively small CRO, or contract research organization here in the Triangle. It's called Impact Pharmaceutical Services. So we do basically anything we provide a variety of drug development services, and it's pretty vague, but really anything a sponsor needs, you know, like an AstraZeneca or small sponsors, whatever they need to get their product from the preclinical stages through clinical drug development, we provide. Primarily that, the two main things that we do are medical writing and regulatory affairs. That's the two capacities that I kind of work in as a clinical research scientist. I found that when you start out, at least in a company like mine, you really start out in, a lot of people start out in medical writing. So what that entails is writing the protocols that they just referenced, or the clinical study reports on the back end, huge documents that are used for different purposes throughout clinical development. And I guess I'll get more into that later, but basically, I got my PhD in biochemistry in 2012, and I did a 3-year postdoc here at Duke, just up until this past March, when I was fortunate enough to fall into, to get picked up by Impact. So yeah, I've been in this field a grand total of about 8 months, and I love it. It's for me. It might not be for everybody, but for me, it's exactly what I was looking for.
Thank you, guys. So if each of you can tell us what does your day look like and what did you do in your grad school that's helping you now? Anybody, whoever wants to start?
Sure, I can go.
Okay.
So I work from home. Inventive as an office in Cary, but it's a very small office. And there's really nobody on my team, you know, in the office, so there was no need for me to go into an office. My job involves a lot of data analysis, so there's a lot of spreadsheet. I have 2 huge monitors, and sometimes I can pull the spreadsheet, you know, to cover both monitors, just so I can see everything I need. So there's a lot of data analysis, which is something, of course, you do as a scientist. There's a lot of writing, because I write reports for clients, like based on all the data we collect. I do a lot of feasibility questionnaires, design surveys that we push out to doctors' offices. And then when they respond to us, we collate the data and do a lot of like trend analysis, like is there something we need to look into before we start the clinical trial? And what are the best countries for this clinical trial? So there's a lot of data analysis, report writing, but probably something we don't do as scientists is like the financial aspect. So that was something that was new to me. Like, I mean, I don't care about finance. Not like as a scientist, you know, you show up in the lab, you might order lab materials, but other than that, you're not effectively managing the budget of the project. So if you're going over time, so that was something that was new to me. But besides that, it's just in a lab you work with people. So there's a lot of different groups involved, so there's a lot of collaboration. I remember we used to collaborate with like Baylor, MD Anderson, and so that's still something that I see with the different clients that we work with. I'll let you know if I think of anything else.
Sure, absolutely. So just to, before going to Malik, I was actually teaching a class to 7 students for the past 4 weeks in clinical trial management. So to the students who attended my class, just to give you a background of what feasibility is, and we discussed about it, it is before the trial actually begins. So you reach out to different countries, different labs, different sites to collect the information in order to move into whether to choose that site or not, for example.
So within medical operations where I work, as I mentioned, it's centralized monitoring, which means we get the data from a different team called data management in, again, spreadsheets, and we look at the data line by line, subject by subject, and having the protocol in mind, identify any issues like, you know, if the protocol, if the subjects are following inclusion-exclusion criteria, any prohibited medications. So have a lot of attention to detail and raise queries to data management, and DM will communicate with the sites to clean up the data. So that's majority of the work, like 60 to 70%. And then again, a lot of email communications, a lot of questions from different departments, safety, data management. So responding to them timely is important. So that takes a lot of time. And as a manager, again, there will be line management responsibilities, taking care of the coordinators and specialists and answering their questions. So that's And again, there will be occasionally, like monthly or bi-weekly, there will be meetings with the sponsors who sponsor the clinical trial, and we will be presenting some data, some PowerPoint presentations to them.
So I take a lot of the data that Malik's talking about, that hopefully they've cleaned up, and I put that into a protocol. And this isn't a protocol like in a laboratory. This is about an 80-page document that encompasses basically every aspect of running a clinical trial. I guess to be more accurate, what I would do is take the data that he's talking about and put it into a clinical study report, which is even bigger document. So a lot of what I do is spend time writing those types of documents: clinical protocols, clinical study reports, safety assessments, really just big documents that take a lot of time to put together and a lot of coordination with various teams and sponsors. As Emma was saying, you get some experience doing stuff like collaborations and stuff as a grad student or a postdoc. And I found that to be super useful. If you do a lot of collaborating and you know how to interact with various different types of people and kind of like coordinate a project, then that's really, really useful for what we do, I think. You do spend a lot of time emailing and on the phone, sometimes more than you care for. But it's a reality, right? It's just what we do. And when you go to work, rather than setting up your experiments, getting your tubes ready, you'll sit there at your computer and check this sometimes never-ending list of emails to go through. There's a lot of, I feel like at least in what I do, there's a lot of project management. And you get skills from that. A lot of people, I know when I was a postdoc, I had at least like 3 different projects going on. You have to kind of keep them separated in your head, and keep everything on task. So there's a lot of that project management that goes on because you have all these different documents, all these different people and moving parts that you have to kind of coordinate. So if you're somebody who's kind of like, I guess like tunnel vision or have a hard time seeing the field and kind of like seeing all the different moving parts, then it might be a difficult thing to be in a position, at least like mine. But yeah, I feel like there's tons of stuff tons of critical skills that you learn and as a grad student or a postdoc that you can pull into this field for sure. I could talk for an hour about that kind of stuff, and I'm still, again, I've been in this field for 8 months, so I'm still learning. Sometimes I'll do something and be like, how did I know how to do that? Stuff about it, you don't realize the type of skills you pick up as a scientist all those years. It's much more. It's much more than like southern blotting and western blotting. It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's kind of fun to see the type of skills you actually have that you didn't realize. Did I touch on everything?
Yeah, no, and that actually brings me to the next question is, a lot of the people here are basic scientists. They probably have never seen clinical data, they've never run any human research, they may not even be involved with observational studies or investigator-sponsored trials. So what is it that, if you guys didn't do that while you're grad school or postdoc, how did that translate into what you do now? Or what is it that they can do to expand their knowledge?
So I think you need a science background, but I've seen people who are like English majors as directors of like clinical operations, so anybody can get into the field. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until more recently that we had degrees in clinical research, and I know Kendall University offers that. But I met Schrader at an event just around town. So I will say, getting information, events like this. There's also an Association of Clinical Research Professionals group, and they have a conference that we just had one in October. I try to attend it every year, and it's a place to network too. And I think the goal is really to meet people that do what you're interested in, because sometimes, like I said, I didn't know about feasibility until I joined PRA, and you might not know about things that actually exist. So the goal is to get information, to network, to find ways to talk to people and just find out what they're doing. Do they like what they do? What don't they like about what they do? It doesn't mean it won't be a good fit for you, but it's just, I think exposure is really what you need. Like I would say, like, I feel like I was confined to the lab, and when it came time for me to leave, I'm talking to my professor and like, oh, I know somebody at Duke. This is a real conversation. You can do another postdoc there. So majority of the time, they just think, you know, you want to stay in the lab, but sometimes you want to explore some other options. Personally, for me, at some point I wanted to work with the World Health Organization. At some point I wanted to teach, then I discovered I didn't like grading. Yeah, as a teaching assistant, you know, grade papers, report. But yeah, it's just get information. Get information and, you know, strengthen your skills. Like, what are the things you do very well? Like, how would they fit into what you're looking into? And, you know, but one of the best advice I ever got during the training program was, you know, you're going to get a lot of information, but just soak it up like a sponge. So I think that's the best thing you can do is just go out there and learn more about different things, not necessarily clinical research.
So first of all, I would say as a postdoc and a grad student, you have attained all the soft skills that are needed for any job within clinical industry. You don't have to worry about, you know, confidence or you know, how the job is going to be. Any job you can basically do within clinical trial industry. That's the first thing. And coming to how to enter into the field, within RTP there are a lot of opportunities and to learn as well as to get into the industry. This is like a heartbeat of clinical trial industry, research triangle park. So, and there are several organizations. One of it is NCRAF, North Carolina Regulatory Affairs Forum. They have lectures, and they have lectures going on at quintiles. I see 3-4 times a year, and also they have this RSE certification study course in summer.
They actually happen at Duke,
yeah,
right?
It happens at Duke.
From September to March, I suppose.
Right.
So if anybody's interested in regulatory affairs or just to learn a little more about clinical research, that's another.
So it's not just regulatory, you get a great understanding of whole drug development process, you know, preclinical, clinical, every area. So that's one thing. And second thing is there is ACRP, Association for, like Zoma mentioned. They have, again, monthly lectures here. There is another clinical research organization called CROs, Society for Clinical Research Associates. They do have monthly lectures here. And there is also Clin Rally. It's a meetup group. It's organized by recruiters from PRA Health Sciences. PRH is another CRO here, concentrated in RTP. So that's a good place to go and meet some recruiters there. And I would say get informational interviews with people. You know, face-to-face is better. Go to these places, talk to people.
So you have 3 faces here to reach out to now. Connect with them on LinkedIn.
Sure.
I hope you guys don't mind and try to reach out. That's how I've known Zoma for several years now, and that's how I know Malik. So hopefully I'll know Ryan more now. But yeah, so do that. Go ahead.
So to kind of echo what was already said, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because they covered all the important points. But the main things I think to do if you want to transition is number one, exposure. Just get your head out of the lab a little bit. You know, get exposure to all the different things that are involved in drug development or clinical research. You know, Duke has a lot of clinical trials going on. You know, there are a lot of resources here at Duke. Just kind of make an attempt to get your head out of the lab because it's easy to get sucked up in these tiny little details of your projects, and you kind of have to, right? To make them successful, you have. It's hard to it's hard to be thinking about these tiny little details of your project and then go searching for all this information in this random field that you don't know nothing about, you know. But I think it's extremely important. So getting that exposure in any way that you can, and getting contacts in any way that you can. A lot of times those two go together in terms of like, if you line up informational interviews, you're getting all this information that you don't know. Like I've learned all kinds of stuff today, you know, from these people I just met. Informational interviews, you get all that information and you have a solid contact. If you meet with them face-to-face or on the phone if you have to, but it's even better face-to-face, you know, that's somebody that they're not likely going to forget you. You know, ask them ask them if you can buy them a cup of coffee or like lunch if you can afford it as a grad student. I never could.
Yeah.
And they won't forget you, and they see that dedication, that enthusiasm that you have for getting into the field. And a lot of times, I think this is pretty critical. That's what sets you apart from the different candidates that are in that huge pile that they're likely getting for a job opening. It's going to be which of these candidates knows what they're getting into, or which of these candidates just want to get out of academia. You know, we all understand the people who want to get out of academia. I mean, we're there too. A lot of people do. But who are the candidates who understand, or at least have a rudimentary understanding of how drug development works, and have kind of done the groundwork, done their homework, you know? When you're speaking to the hiring managers, or sometimes even the people higher up, the executives, you know, that can be kind of an interesting situation. But if you can kind of speak the language, it really impresses them. So I think that's what kind of sets you apart, is just having that understanding. Molly gave me an excellent book called Careers in Biotechnology or something like that, right?
Careers in Biotechnology and Drug Development.
Yeah, I would highly recommend that book. Because I had no idea. I mean, my father's a doctor, you know, I had a lot of people in healthcare in my family. I thought I had a pretty good understanding of stuff that went on, but clinical research is like, it's like the vaguest term ever. Right? There's so many different things that go on in clinical research or drug development, you know. The book, and Molly can provide that or ask me for that reference, and I'll be glad to give it to you. That book really describes all the different moving parts in drug development and where you might fit in as a PhD or someone with a scientific background. You know, what type of personality it takes to be in that certain capacity. It was an excellent book that breaks everything up, if I remember correctly. You know, it'll describe a certain role and say, you know, here's what type of a person might enjoy this type of role. You know, so that was awesome.
Yeah, it's by Toby Friedman, F-R-E-E-D-M-A-N is the last name. Yeah, and it goes all the way from the basic discovery research all the way through like sales and marketing.
Yeah.
So it's soup to nuts.
So if you're looking for jobs, as opposed to typing in whatever those sites are, Indeed or whatever, clinical research jobs, you can type in like medical writer or regulatory affairs specialist or something like that, or any type of job. You know, get more specific like that. And there are certain jobs in clinical research that you might like. There's some jobs you might hate. You know, somebody who likes clinical operations might hate, you know, regulatory affairs. So it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. So I think that's very important to figure out how all that stuff works. And I'm still doing that right now. Second thing is to try to get training. And this kind of falls into the same category as like the exposure kind of thing, but try to get training wherever you can outside of the lab. And then again, this is difficult if you have kids and like, you know, your projects going on. It's hard to find time, but that's important. Duke has a lot of training things. In addition to RAC classes, there's a regulatory affairs internship here at Duke. It's through the DTMI, the Duke Translational Medicine Institute. I did that. It's like, I think it's like 2 months, but it's only one night a week. So just after you get out of the lab that day, you go there for a couple hours. And they teach you about, really it's an overview of drug development and what regulatory affairs is. There's not a whole lot, you're not going to be any kind of specialist after this or anything, but you're going to have a basic understanding of what it is. But probably more importantly, you're going to meet all kinds of people in it. You know, my company goes to that internship and gives a presentation on drug development and what we do every year. And that's where I met our COO and another person who works for, that's how I got my job basically, was through that. I got their cards after that course one night when they came to talk to us. So it all kind of goes together, you know, obtaining this training, exposure, making contacts, it all goes together, and it's time consuming, but after a while, you'll see it start to kind of work, you know, you see things start to open up. That's the way I see it anyway.
In addition to that, when I was at Duke, I actually reached out to one of the coordinators at DCRI, and they run clinical monitoring classes for their CRAs, and I attended all of those clinical monitoring classes. So yeah, I'm at Duke, can I do that?
Yeah, Duke has a lot of research.
They wouldn't hire me, but they could let me take the class, so you know, it was an interesting exposure.
Yeah, another one is Duke Scholars in Molecular Medicine. Has anybody heard of that?
Yes.
It's a little more selective. I think there was only like 20 people who were accepted when I was in it. But that's another way you can kind of get exposure to. I was in clinical oncology at the time. To kind of get exposure to that, you know, see the doctor-patient interactions, talk to the research coordinators and stuff like that.
Yeah, if you like to get lost on the internet, then there's clinicaltrials.gov and fda.org, and you can get tons of information over there in terms of.
FDA has a lot of conferences. You know, they videocast online free, so they are very informative.
And another good one here at Duke is the Duke Office of Clinical Research, Doctor. So they have a lot of classes, and those are listed through the online app. So, like under your employee training thing, that's how you get to those through Duke at Work. So I look at those as well. And like Ryan was saying, it's a great way to meet people who are in the field. So.
Do you know for those ones at the Office of Clinical Research for grad students who are paid as 1099 miss and don't have Duke at Work, can we go to those?
Oh yeah, I think you can still find the schedule
Okay.
online on their website.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah, and they're very open. I mean, they're very welcoming. Oh, sure.
And also I would like to say, you know, as a PhDs and postdocs, don't wait for an ideal position. Like, you know, within clinical industry, there are some positions that can match your level, your education, like maybe regulatory writing or medical writer, such kind of jobs, which can be challenging as well as that can pay well, but at the same time, it's not easy to get in every time. So take in any job, just enter the field, and your growth is very faster compared to someone who is not a postdoc, I mean PhDers.
Yeah, there's a lot of room for growth.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. There's a lot of room for growth. If you can get the thing is getting your foot in the door, you can get lucky and get a job that's more to your level of experience. But you kind of have to swallow your pride a little bit because it won't be long.
Yeah.
It won't be long. If you're good and you have that strong scientific background, you won't be in that position for long. You just have to get your foot in the door.
Yeah. That's a good point. I can attest to that. I actually got hired as a project specialist too at INC Research, and the requirement was bachelor's in science, and so I did make my move, and I'm able to move up much faster than my colleagues. So, you know, and so did Zoma.
Yeah. So you just get in there, you learn as much as you can. You walk with people below you, you work with people above you. What do you do? You know, how do you do it? Just get all the information. And before you know it, it's, you know, you can transition into another role, you know. And the thing is, if you're looking into a role, you want to make sure you're doing things in the next role, you know. And I say, like, right now, I mean, I work very closely with my boss because she trusts me with a lot more stuff now. It's like, oh, I'm having an interview this afternoon, you know. I mean, I don't interview people like that, you know. But she pulled me in because, like, okay, I need you to start seeing some of these things. So, yeah, so you just never know. But the goal is to get your foot in the door. And I mean, when I got in, I'll tell you, I got paid less than a postdoc. You know, but as time went on, you know, people see what you can do, and then, you know, you go to where you belong eventually.
There are positions, though, and this has already been said, but just to reiterate, there are positions, though, that are appropriate to your degree level, and that will pay you way more than a postdoc. So it doesn't mean don't shoot for those, by all means. That's what I was able to get. But again, if you start at a lower level, you will rise up.
Quickly.
Yeah, pretty quickly.
You know, and the industry is growing very rapidly. Like, at least CRO business is growing 8 to 10% a year. All the CROs. And especially therapeutic areas like oncology, neurosciences, all the CNS related disorders and metabolic disorders. These are the 3 big markets currently.
Shraddha, I had a question. As Zoma was talking about, I've also been toying with the idea of teaching and clinical research. And I just heard you say that being in clinical management, you still teach. So how did that work out?
Yeah, so that again comes with networking. So I enjoy teaching. I did teaching during my grad school when I was 6 years. 6 years in grad school. So fairly recently, and I like teaching too. So what I've done is there are certain systems we use in the company which could be new and other people don't know about those systems or don't know about those techniques. I have taken upon myself, and I run monthly trainings to them, and through that, again, I took up teaching, and then I was looking for places where I can impart my knowledge and also, encourage other grad students and postdocs if they wanted to get into clinical trials. And so Molly and I discussed about it, and Molly was looking for somebody, and I was looking for the similar thing, and it just worked out, and it clicked. And I'm happy that I was able to teach at least 7 students in the past 4 weeks, and it's been great. So you don't have to be, I think, a traditional teacher or a semester class teaching teacher. If you like something, you can find your avenues, and you can look for things, and find your own little group to do that. So, that's how I did that. And I know Zoma, you want to
Yeah, so I think as you work with people, to learn what your skills are, and when you're talking with your manager, you let them know the things you're interested in. So for me, I do a lot of training within our team. When we have new people join the team, like our processes, because I do a lot of like the standard operating procedures, like I write those, with my manager. And so that gives me that, that teaching component where we have a training within the team, like how do you use the survey tool? And I can go through the PowerPoint and do some demonstration, or how do you pull this kind of data? So I still get that experience, and it's not everybody in my role that does that. It's just, it's something like the teaching interest, it's still there, and as long as I understand something, I feel like I can relate to people. And so my boss saw that, and it's something I get to do, like, oh, we just hired somebody, can you show them how to do this? And so I really enjoy that part of the job too.
I'm pretty sure all of you being managers as well train your team and things like that, so that also counts as teaching, right? Malik, you have like people?
So one of the things that helped me to grow at ANC is taking on a little more responsibilities, like not just your job, not just the 40-hour job, reviewing the data and raising queries, but think about like what else you can do to help the department, and at the same time that in turn reflects in your growth. Writing SOPs and developing departmental training materials. The best thing is talk to your boss, express what your interests are, and automatically they start thinking about what responsibilities they can assign you. So, and being a PhD, we are trying to do almost anything.
And multiple things at a time.
Yeah.
From basic level to executive level, so that really helps.
And a quick question to all of you, and also Shraddha. One big fear that anyone in academia always has, jumping to industry, other than the big jump, is also the security of the job. Did you ever think about that? How long you will have this job, funding, and due to the constant layoffs in industry, even in academia, there's always a grant comes to an end, but how do you face the job security? What was your answer?
So I can start with that since I relatively recently got my job. So it can be a little more precarious than in academic research. I'm sure most of you have heard that before if you know anything about clinical development, or biotech for that matter. Really anything outside academia in science, it can be a little more precarious. But there are a lot of steps that you can take to kind of ensure your overall security, which means while you have your position, if you take steps while you have your position to learn as many people as you can, diversify your skills, as Malik was just talking about, so that you can carry over to another role if you needed to. I feel like if your department folds up all of a sudden, which can happen, if you have a lot of contacts and a variety of skills, you will, from what I've seen, you can fairly, I don't want to say easily, it's not so much of a hurdle to bounce into another position at another company or within your own company. So while your particular position might be a little more precarious or not as solid as like your postdoc or something like that, there are a lot of steps that you can take to effectively look out for your own job security. Would y'all agree with that?
So yeah, unlike in academics, in industry, decisions are made very fast. If they see that something is not profitable, they are not going to pull it for another 6 months. So decisions are made fast, and you may lose your job next week. So that's one thing. Uncertainty is there, but the great thing is there is a lot of growth and a lot of work in the industry. So what is important is keep yourself updated with developing technologies, learn more, not just within the job responsibilities. Learn across the departments what they are doing. That really helps. It's very easy. If you lose job, it's easy to get a job in 1 to 2 months. So because there are a lot of industries, and clinical research is growing a lot.
Sometimes even faster. I mean, we had a big company, one of our big clients, sorry to break it out, you just want to add something to it. One of our big companies called UCB, their medical writing department folded up, and one of their senior writers that we worked with immediately got, like 2 days later, started working with us. So sometimes it can, just to expand on that, sometimes it can be just like that, if you know enough people.
Okay, so I'll just add to what this said. Networking, I think, is very critical, and I'll tell you a story where I attended a meeting with a client, and the lady was sitting next to me, used to work at PRA, and she was a close friend of my boss. Okay, you just never know. I mean, we're coming in from different companies, so you just never know where you'll meet people. So the first thing, when you get your role, you want to make sure you learn a lot. You're very good at what you're doing. Because if they say your department had to lay off, half of the people there, your work ethics, there are things that will speak for you when they're making those decisions. Like, okay, should we let somebody go or not? There are people that will be like, oh, she does her job. I mean, we cannot afford to lose her, except the old department packs up. But so if you know people, you do what you do well, I think you have a little more security that way too. And like you said, I know people that got a job within a week. We're in a good place in the RTP. I think it's just, I moved here from Houston, not too many options when it comes to biotech there. So for this place, I feel a little more secure. Like, hey, if I get kicked out of Inventive, there are options to explore as well. So, but another thing is just be mindful of what's going on in your company. There are acquisitions, there are mergers, and talk to your boss. Like, if I hear something weird, I don't like to pass rumors with people. Like, hey, Irina, that's my boss. Like, so I heard what's going on. And she'd be like, oh, don't worry about your job. This is, So just be aware of what's going on when they push out all those financial reports. Like I said, finances and, but I'm learning now, okay, were we profitable? Did we grow as a company? So, but there's a lot of growth in like the biotech and CRO industry, and so I think there's some level of stability right now that I don't worry too much about losing my job. But there are different little things within the company that can tell you how the finances are. Say you used to do something, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, we can't do this, we have to cut back. So those are like little signs that you can watch for. And if you think you need to look for a job, then you probably want to start looking before anybody puts more information out there. But you're in a good place, so.
Yeah, if you're thinking about CRO industry, North Carolina is mecca for CRO industry. It's not as great for pharmaceutical and biotech, but every pharmaceutical and biotech that needs to run clinical trial has some CRO that's working for them over here. So this is mecca. In addition to that, keep good relationships with your colleagues, keep good relationships with your superiors, but also people that you manage. Because you don't know who the person below you is going to go next. And so when I joined the company, I was told you got to manage your upper management, but you also got to manage your lower management. So you got to manage both ways. And once you start proving yourself, they will start trusting you. So all of us here probably interview. We also pass good candidates to our bosses. So they trust us when we say that this person is good. And so that's the way it works. And getting job is not just your issue. Finding a good employee is also the company's issue. So it's a match. It's not that you're just proving yourself. So be aware of that. It's not that just you're looking for a job. Even they want to. So
Can I add something
Sure.
quickly? So a lot of times when people are looking for jobs, at least within like the 2 jobs I've had in the industry, the job circulates within our team first. Do you know anybody who can fill this role? Okay, before it gets posted online or things like that. So that's why, I stress networking, and I have a true story. There was a guy at Quintiles I bugged so much. I mean, he told me, you don't have experience, you don't have experience. But even though they could not hire me, when the job I got in at PRA came out, I had applied for the job, but it sent me the same job. It was like, look, I found this, I think it'll be a good fit. So sometimes you're talking to people, you think, oh, I'm tired of bugging him, but they know what you're looking for. And so when he saw something that was a better fit for me, he sent it to me. I mean, I could have missed it online and then would have gotten the information from him. So the goal is just to, whatever you do, just make sure you're talking to people. Let people know you in the industry. I mean, I met her at an event around town. I've met a couple of Duke people through Women in Bio too. And there was somebody at Duke here that I sat with before our interview. She's a postdoc. And I know her very well, and so like, when you go into the interview, just be relatable. It's not about science. It's not about all this cool stuff within the lab. They might not know your background, but just be a good person, and talk to people, and let them know what you're looking for. When they see something in that line, they'll remember you. So.
Any questions from the audience? Anything? Pick their brain. Yes.
So I think 2 of you mentioned that you do a lot of data kind of analysis and you put together reports. So how well versed do you, coming out of your postdoc, do you have to be on a particular disease state or drug in order to actually be able to do the data interpretation? Does that kind of make sense? Like, does your company focus on like one disease state, or do you just are very broad?
Go ahead.
I think usually the answer to that is no, clinical research. The key pillars of your scientific training are what you're going to use most. It's not really going to be your specialty in a specific disease area or even field like biostats or something like that, even though that would be a key advantage. So some things can be advantageous, I think. I certainly use a lot of the training that I had. I was in cancer research, so a lot of the drugs that we do are in oncology. So I mean, it helps. It helps to have that kind of background. But a lot of stuff, I'm also doing stuff in like macular edema, which I know nothing about. And I feel like it doesn't really matter as much as your key components of your scientific training. One of our our senior clinical scientist has a PhD in marine biology. That gives you an idea of how important it is to have, especially in the disease area. That being said, again, it helps to know the different drug classes, whatever, or various areas of certain components of certain disease aspects or whatever. So.
Yeah. Most of the things is you learn a lot on the job. So it doesn't matter, what background you have. There are people with just MBA and they works in medical operations. So, it's a lot of learning happening, at the same time, we enter the field without any finance background, we learn a lot about budgets. So, you don't have to worry about any other, having different areas and all those things. But the most important thing is attend all these meetings and, try to talk their language, when you learn a lot about drug development, clinical trials, when you go to the interview, you can ask some interesting questions. That's what makes you get hired. People see that you know something about the industry and you are really interested.
So I just want to add that with your science background, I don't think you can be intimidated by any new science. That's just the way I see it, You're going to learn a lot. Like my job, for the most part, when I'm working on a clinical trial, it's 6 months. Oh, we want to run this clinical trial. This is what we planned on paper. And then I take that information, go through historical data, look at similar clinical trials, how did they do, what issues did they have. I should service to doctors, look at epidemiology data, where can you find those patients, and then we collect the information, give it to them, and they go to our team, the clinical operations, okay? So my job is 6 months, but I get exposed to different indications, like different diseases. Nobody, I mean, it's whatever the company gets awarded, right? That's what we're gonna work on. So I just say, as long as you're not intimidated by medical terminology, and a lot of times before we actually start any work, we're meeting with the client. Okay, so this is what you have in mind. And I get to ask them questions, you know, and I get to read, you know, on the indication. And a lot of companies have like training portals where you can do some basic therapeutic area training, like in neurology. I'm a biochemist. You can do neurology, do oncology, to just get the basic background. And then if you need to read up about a drug, you can always go to the website. There's a lot of, you know, information on the internet. Just make sure you're using reliable websites, you know. And then when the conversation comes up, you can ask questions, the right questions, you know, because you don't want to come naive to like a meeting with a client, like, oh, so what is this? You know, yeah. So that's another thing. But you will learn, I mean, everything I know now, I learned from people above or below me, you know, and I'm teaching it to other people. So you'll learn on the job for the most part. But don't be intimidated by, I always say, like, any indications you've never heard of, like ankylosing spondylitis, like, oh, what's that?
Yeah,
You have science.
Yeah, you're constantly interacting with experts in the field.
Yeah.
And then they don't, not only do you not have to provide your expertise in that area, they don't want you to provide expertise.
No.
It's hard
No,
for me,
yeah.
it's hard for me as somebody who was in cancer research for 10 years, you know, in grad school as a postdoc, to not be working with a client that's doing like these cool immunotherapy trials or something, and be like, hey, have you thought about doing this? Like, no, they don't want to hear that. I've tried that, but I imagine for some people it wouldn't work out too well.
Yeah.
And so for me as well, so yeah, that's, I'm glad you brought that up. I work with a lot of different teams. And on every clinical trial that we work on, I have a medical director I'm working with. So sometimes the doctor's office will have a question that I cannot readily pull the answer from the protocol. I'm like, hey, we have this question from this doctor's office. What do you think? Sometimes it will know the answer, but sometimes it will have to go to the client because the client wrote the protocol. So there are different resources, and yeah, it's right. You don't have to be a doctor or like to.
So when you first, sorry, just kind of following up on like learning on the job like everything else. When you first came into these positions straight from academia, did you have like a formal mentor training you, or it's just you kind of just learned as you go type of setting?
Yes, at IMC we have very good training. There is a lot of, first there is a lot of online training, IMC college, and then you're also given a buddy, you know, medical operations buddy they call it. They train you, and at the same time the team is very supportive. You know, like your success is the whole team's success, and that's how the whole department is recognized. So no one wants to see you doing poor, so they want to see you really succeeding. So,
yeah.
Everyone is very helpful.
Yeah, there's a huge team environment in clinical research. That's another important component that needs to be brought up here. Is if you're not a team player, I probably shouldn't get involved in clinical research because it's really a team kind of thing, which is a huge advantage because in terms to get to your question, in terms of your training, as Malik was just saying, your team is intimately involved in your training because they want you to succeed, because you succeeding is good for the company. It's all about what's good for the company, you know. And if they train you well, it's good for your managers, it's good for the company and your executives. Everybody wants you to succeed. And you know, most people are good people, they just want to train you. So like I was in the past few days, I had a big delivery, like my first huge delivery going out to one of our key clients. And I still get in a situation where I don't really know what's going on. You know, and timelines are huge. It's a huge part of our lives, and this was a very important timeline. And I got into a situation where I had like 24 hours to get something out. I was up at like 2 a.m. the night before, which doesn't happen very often, hardly at all actually. But this particular night, I was up till about 2 a.m. Freaking out, and then the next day I had to get this deliverable out, and it's not just like emailing it to somebody or mailing it in a packet, it's like you have to go through all these twists and turns, this electronic data management system, which I barely know how to use. And I had to get this thing out. Anyway, long story short, the team kind of like swooped around and was like, all right, we understand we all had trouble using this thing the first time we did it. Let's all, so like 2 or 3 people just really came to me and helped me out. So I think that's pretty typical in clinical research, is you'll have a team of support, and don't be afraid to ask for help. It's not, you never feel like you're on your own, which sometimes I did as a postdoc and a grad student.
It filters into the next question. How is the work-life balance in clinical research?
I think it depends on what you do. So my role is global, and I'll tell you that's one of the biggest challenges I have. When I get on the computer 7:45, email, okay? But it's coming from people in Europe. And then around 9 o'clock, the US people kick in. It piles up. And there are some clients, they want to hear from you every day. And sometimes like, oh, we're trying to set up a meeting. That time will not work for me. This will work for me. So the email just piles up. And then by 5 o'clock, when you're thinking I should get off the computer, if you're still there around 6, people in Asia come to work. Okay, no, this is for real. So they're coming to work, and if they need anything, if the doctor has a question, if I need the answer like within a day, I better respond right before I get off the computer. If not, if I respond the following day, it's already 1 extra day. So that for me is the biggest challenge. And the fact that I'm working from home, I mean, there's no snow days, as I was telling Ryan before. If it snows, come on, they know you have your computer. You know? So yeah, so I don't get all those things, but you have to consciously, you know. I do get like some of the craziest projects on my team. Okay, I've literally had project pulled from people, and they're like, you know what, they really have a lot of relationship issues here. We need you to come in and, you know, help smooth things out with the client, you know, because my boss says, you don't show your emotions much, but that's not true. To people I know, you don't see my emotions, but you know when you're at work, you try to act right. So, yeah, but that's the thing. So there's some things that, for me, sometimes I'm working around the clock, unless I effectively say, you know what, I'm getting up at 5:30 and that's it. You know, if you have a deliverable, like you said, you might be up late trying to get it out so you can have your peace of mind, you know, the following day. But you have to consciously try not to, like, have a style. Initially, I mean, of course, I was trying to prove myself. Oh, I can reply emails at night. But I stopped doing that for the most part. Like, when I get off the computer, like, it won't kill them if they don't hear from me until tomorrow, right? Seriously, nobody's gonna die just because I didn't reply their email. So yeah, so there's some things you have to consciously, like, and then if your workload gets a bit too much, you can always talk to your manager. And so they'll bring people in like, okay, you can delegate this to them, and kind of have a little more balance. But it just depends on what you do. And like, this is December. A lot of people are gonna go on holidays, especially in Europe. It's gonna be pretty quiet. I'm gonna have some downtime. I can arrange my computer, you know, all the documents, and yeah. So I think it just depends on you, your efforts, and to show that, you know what, I have to have a balance, and then how much work you get.
So I think for us it's similar, like Zoma mentioned. You know, most of the departments within clinical trial works with global teams. You know, Asia, Europe, North America. So, but at the same time, there is a great work-life balance once your managers see that, you know, you take the responsibility. They don't worry about your timings. You know, when you come and when you go, there is always great work-life balance. You can take work from home. Working in industry, that's another thing. Like 2 days a week, 3 days a week, you can work from home, depending on your responsibilities.
Yeah, so my short answer to that is it's way better than it was. The global aspect can be quite challenging, especially for me, being relatively new. get emails all throughout the night from people in Europe. But you get used to it. And like Zoma said, nobody's going to die if you don't get an email back. But you also can't let yourself get behind, so you have to kind of stay on top of it. For the most part, when you take off, you take off. You don't have to think about your project. You don't have to think about anything. So I think that's one of the greatest parts. Because like as a postdoc, if I took off, I had 3 projects that nothing was going to happen with. It was just going to sit there. You know, if anything, my boss would start to get mad. You know, that they weren't going anywhere, and she'd be expecting some kind of answer about something. But for the most part, from what I've seen, when you take off, your team members or your coworkers will kind of, they want you to take off, because when they want to take off, they want to be completely off, you know what I mean? So everybody kind of steps in and picks up the slack for you when you're gone. And everybody supports that. You never feel bad about taking off, unless you have a big deliverable going out or something. You kind of have to use your own common sense and be able to know when you can take off and when you can't. If you have a big deliverable going out, or you're a key component of a team that has a big deliverable going out, you don't want to take a 3-day vacation, you know. And you might even have to work a little on the weekend. But the point is, I think that's relatively rare. And I find myself with more free time now, you know, I have hobbies now.
To also add to that, CRO industry is a service industry.
Yeah.
So you get paid by the client, and the client has a budget, and they want to ensure that things are done in that time, in that budget. And so most of us have to, we're not clocking in and clocking out, but we do have to write what we did for those 40 hours, like, you know, which team you worked on, which study you worked on. So even your managers, your company, your client does not want you to work more than 40, 45 hours. Like, I have implicit direction. I don't want to see 45 hours or more on your time card. So that goes to say that, you know, you gotta set up your time, and that's good because it keeps you on the clock and you don't slack and you try to finish everything that you have to do in that time. So that's basically what we have today. Any last thoughts from the panelists here?
I think the big challenge for you guys who is interested in the industry is to put your foot in the door. So focus on getting all kinds of trainings like internships, attend these meetings, get connected to people, take informational interviews. If you can get certifications, they are not needed, but they will brand you like someone is serious about the industry.
Yeah, so I just in the same, pretty much similar to that. It's just be willing to learn. You know, even before you get the job, when you get the job, look for ways you can do things better. Okay, so for instance, I said I work with a lot of Excel. I mean, of course, I knew Excel in grad school. But at some point, I wondered if there were some things I could do a little more efficiently. So there's some tricks, I mean, YouTube videos, like, I'm not kidding, you know? And then I got a book at the library, like Excel tips, and I found all this cool stuff, you know? Then normally I would take my coworkers, like, we're using a tool, but we're using it manually in a way because we don't know the capabilities. So it's just sometimes just find ways to improve on your skills. I think that will give you credibility within the industry and that will propel your career, you know. But to get your foot in the door, networking, I mean, talking to people and let them know what your needs are. Sometimes you'll feel like you're bugging them out. Some people don't mind, some people mind, but they forget. You know, so don't be, I mean, and I honestly, like, I was very shy. You know, I'm still a little shy until I get to know people, but you have to put yourself out there. So that was something I have to learn coming out of grad school. Like, you feel uncomfortable going to talk to somebody, but you have to do it. The more you do it, the easier it gets. So.
And also, don't be selective for the positions. Take any position to put your foot in the door, and also don't. For your resume, don't put too much of your PhD, publications. It's good, they'll come into play in long term once you get into the industry. But for several entry-level positions, they don't want to see long, experience, and don't play PhD too much. But.
I had a, sorry, along the lines of getting your foot in the door, on average, I know it's hard to kind of give a number, but between, like, if you're in knowing that this is what you want to do, and you know, like, I still have X amount of time in my postdoc, how far in advance should you start applying before it gets into, like, oh, I'm not ready to leave yet because I still have a commitment here?
So
Does
I'll
that
take,
make sense? Like,
yeah, I'll take this because this is fresh on my mind. This is one of the more difficult things to do, especially without pissing somebody off.
right.
I would say, and people might have different opinions on this. I'd say my opinion is the earlier the better to kind of get the ball rolling. That doesn't mean you have to be full out job searching, all the time. You still have because you don't know how long it's going to take. No matter how much effort you're putting in, you don't know exactly how long it's going to take. So you can't let your projects just sit there.
Right.
But you can get the ball rolling, as soon as possible. You can start taking up those training things, like the regulatory affairs internship, a night a week, whenever that is, or various other things. Or reading that book, when you get home and starting to learn the language of clinical development. You can start that stuff like right now. That's a huge help. Talking to your PI about it can be difficult and like kind of scary. It was for me, and I had a pretty understanding PI, but I was a little nervous about it. But I told her, I was like, because they want you to be in like a tenured professor, right? Most of them do, or at least in science in some capacity, like bench science in some capacity, right? You typically know very little else other than that world. So when I went to talk to my PI, she didn't really understand what I was trying to do, but I did. And it doesn't matter if they understand it or not. It helps if they do. Like everybody knows Donald McDonald. He knows a lot about clinical research. He knows. I talked to him about it. He understood it completely. But my PI did not. But you can let them. You can talk to them and let them know that you have intentions not to stay at the bench and you want to go into clinical development, and you want to start taking those steps. It might be a good idea, depending on your PI, to go ahead and let them know, and that's what I did. And mine understood. She didn't understand, but she was supportive. She was like, okay, I'll support you. You do that. You have to take care of your kids. You have to do what you think is best. If your heart's not in this, then go for it. So I was fortunate that she took it like that. So that would be my suggestion, is to get the ball rolling. You might not want to go tell your PI right now, but do a little more homework and read a little bit more about the industry if you want, and then maybe relatively soon have a talk, sit down and have a one-on-one discussion. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah, that makes sense. Honestly, I cannot give you like a timeline.
Right.
But like you said, it's communication. It's you have to go out there and see what's out there too. Okay, like what is the job? I mean, sometimes there's like a lot of jobs out there. So you want to pick like a good time, maybe like in the summer. I honestly, I don't know what the trend is right now, to start applying as well. Okay? And most of that information you get by talking to people, but it comes down to communication. Sometimes your PI, we work with some doctors here at Duke, and so some of them are aware of like the other industries outside academia, and they can actually point you to people that might be able to give you more information. But sometimes they just always assume like, oh, I just want to go your route, So that's where the communication comes in. Just let them know your intentions, like how much longer do we have for this grant? Like you almost always know. And then for me, for the most part, I really didn't have time to like look for jobs as a postdoc. That's just the fact. Like I planned on it, but before I knew it, the postdoc was over and I was out there like, looking for a job. So, but it comes down to communication.
And you don't have to talk to your PI and say, look, I'm going to start looking right now. You can be like, I want to get this paper written, but I'm going to start getting the ball rolling and start talking to people and taking some training where I can. But I want to finish up this paper or, meet this certain endpoint. You don't have to be like, I'm going to, hey boss, I'm going to start looking tomorrow, and if I get offered something tomorrow, in 2 weeks I'm gone. It doesn't have to be like that. So you have to be, I think it's advantageous to be kind of diplomatic about it.
Yeah.
It's all about how you say it,
It's
So
a
I think-
good way of practicing because that's what you're going to do in corporate
Yeah,
life. It's
no
how
doubt.
to talk, how to negotiate.
No doubt. So just think about your current situation, you know, and how your PI is as a person, and how they might take it, you know, and kind of be strategic in how you present it to them. Some people do just not talk to their PI and take off. You know, you start looking, and then once they're offered something, they're like, all right, I'm out of here. You know, and you're not going to get arrested for doing that. You know, you can do that. But you're
Don't
gonna,
burn bridges.
but I'm not saying to do that at all. I'm just saying some people have done that, but it's so it's uncomfortable either way. I wouldn't recommend doing that. You do not want to burn bridges, which is why it's uncomfortable to talk to your PI. They might get mad, frankly, depending on your PI, because they have made an investment in you. But what I'm saying is, I think that can be the most potentially the smoothest way of doing it is just being like, look, I want to do this, but I want to meet these endpoints. It's good for me. It's good for you. And maybe down the road, I'll get a job. At least then, if you get a job a couple months later, they won't be too surprised.
And sometimes even companies will wait. I mean, we have an example who, with one of my students, their company is willing to wait for 10 months. So, you know, it happens.
It's how good are you and how bad do you really want the job? Like if they see your interest, they're willing to wait. And I know we wait for people too.
Yeah, and companies have a lot of times depending on the management, sometimes they have a lot of foresight. Like we're already looking, so we're about to hire two. Oh, I'm going to mention this anyway. We're hiring 2 clinical research scientists, which is entry level. If anybody wants to talk to me about that, come talk to me. I was just notified about that yesterday, by the way. But we're also looking towards what's going to happen like next year. You know, we're very proactive at my company. So if you're not ready to leave now, you know, talk to us or talk to whatever company you're looking at, preferably face to face, and be like, you know, I'm not ready right now. And they'll understand. You know, most people were a postdoc at some point or a grad student at some point. Be like, but next year, you know, I'm really looking forward to about a year from now to getting on. And if something opens up, you'd be surprised how good a memory some of these people have, especially if you're good or a good candidate, and they'll let you know, or you can check back in with them later on, you know. But at least you've let them know that you looked for that. So it doesn't have to be now or never, you know.
Kind of going off that point, conversely, does that look bad to an employer that you're kind of jumping ship, say in the middle of a contract, right? Does that raise any red flags? Say you're in the middle of a postdoc, and you know you take a position at company X. Does that reflect upon you negatively, or since you guys were all postdocs and whatnot?
That's a good question.
There's a general understanding, right? We're talking about fulfilling your contract, waiting for the right time, right? I'm ready next year. Well, what happened if that time is now?
So
Right.
I can jump in here. So I interview quite regularly in my department, and we've had PhDs and postdocs come to us this way, and I never judge them just because they are ready to break their contract with a postdoc. I mean, if they give me a good reason why they want to join my company, this department, that's good enough for me. And if you're a good person and you're trainable, I mean, honestly, I don't care.
Yeah, that's a great, sorry.
So yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing. The only person you worry about when you're jumping ship is really your PI.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask you why you want to join my team. If your reason is valid enough, I see your interest, I see the enthusiasm, you're good. But the only person, like the relation that really matters at that point, I think, is with your PI. It's not so much with the company. It's just what skills are you bringing to us. Yeah.
Sure.
I think we're almost done, or in fact,
Yeah, I think
about time.
Yeah, we want to be respectful for our panelists'
Yeah.
time, so, and thank them for coming.